Quand on veut faire son IFR, quand on veut passer l'IR, souvent, tout le temps, on nous demande de passer un test d'anglais spécifique à l'IFR avant même d'avoir volé en IFR. Et c'est ça le paradoxe en fait de la chose, c'est que les écoles en général demandent à ce qu'on soit déjà titulaire du FCL055 IFR avant de commencer la formation. Alors qu'en général, il ferait mieux d'attendre qu'on ait volé un petit peu en IFR avant de le faire. So, the first thing that we need to understand is when we fly IFR compared to when we fly VFR, what do we always have? We always have a flight plan, exactly that. We always have a flight plan. Now, we talked yesterday about the flight strip. We talked yesterday about the flight strip. And the flight strip, when it's a VFR flight, it needs to be filled manually by the controller with a pen. In IFR, in most control towers, if you have an IFR flight plan, just wait for the steerman to go past. It's always nice to say your lesson's been interrupted by a steerman. And in the tower, that means that the controller doesn't need to fill in the details. There's a printer in the tower, and the flight strip is printed automatically. So you don't need to actually do the contact in the same way. In IFR, as the name suggests, instrument flight rules, you navigate using your instruments. So we navigate using, comment on dit les points tournants?
Turning points.
Turning points, waypoints. Waypoints. We navigate using waypoints. And what sort of waypoints do we have when we fly IFR? Typically, we will use a VOR, or we will use IFR 5-letter points. So there are thousands of these points. They're everywhere. So typically, we will navigate along a route between different IFR points. And our flight plan will show which points we're going to use. That's typically the basic way that we fly when we fly IFR. Because we have a flight plan, and because the procedures are different, this will change the way in which we interact with ATC. So our first contact with ATC and our clearance will be slightly different. Now, an IFR departure clearance compared to a VFR clearance, it has certain information. And typically, I generally divide the clearance down into 4 parts. It has a departure. It has the runway that we're going to use for the departure. It has an initial level, and it has a transponder code. So it reads like DRIT, DRIT. Most airports have what is called an SID, Standard Instrument Departure. Now, a Standard Instrument Departure is typically, it's a route. It's a pre-defined route for all traffic departing in a certain direction, is generally made up of a point, an IFR point, or a waypoint, plus a number, plus a letter. Point, number, and letter. So it will have a point, so it could be Tokar, for example. Then it will have a number. The number is the version of the procedure. So if it is the first time the procedure has been published, then it will be number 1, the second time, number 2, and so on. So let's say, for example, this is the second version of this procedure. And then it will have a letter. The letter is the runway. The letter designates which runway the procedure uses. Okay? So we have a Tokar to, let's say, for example, runway 23, Tokar to Bravo. So our departure will be called, the name of the procedure is the Tokar to Bravo. for example.
So we request a SID.
So we request a clearance,
Yeah.
and the controller gives us the departure that we're going to use.
Okay.
So the key thing to remember when we do an IFR contact is that we don't have to do like the VFR. We can just contact straight away and say who we are, where we are, and what we want. You don't need to give the number of people on board. Why? Because it's on the flight plan. Typically, when we move from a tower controller to an approach controller after departure, the approach controller needs to know 3 things. They need to know our full call sign. Whenever we change to a different frequency, they must know our full call sign because there could be a similar call sign already on the frequency. They need to know our cleared level, so that the level that we've been cleared to by the previous controller, because there could have been a change, a non-standard clearance before. So the next controller needs to know this information. And they also need to know our procedure or our route that we're following.